So what exactly are you going to achieve with those pastries? Patricia's voice was laced with condescending scorn. Okay, sure, you've got a business. Buns and muffins. But when are you going to do something serious with your life? Natasha gave a dry smile, eyes lowered to her cup of tea. Remarks like that from her mother-in-law had long stopped surprising her. After 6 years of marriage, she had grown used to the idea that her hard work, sleepless nights, and countless burned trays meant nothing to Patricia, just some frivolous woman's hobby. But Natasha knew deep down that Crumb and Whimsy wasn't a game or a side hustle. It was her purpose. Her mission. Her path. It all started when she was 23. She had just quit her office job, slammed the door behind her, and realized she couldn't stand writing someone else's reports anymore. Feeling hopeless, she baked a batch of gluten-free cupcakes using her mother's recipe, just to keep her mind busy. She snapped a photo, posted it on Instagram, and went to bed without any expectations. By morning, her inbox had exploded. Can I place an order? Do you do delivery? What other flavors do you have? And just like that, a business was born. First, it was her tiny rental kitchen. Then a rented garage she converted into a mini workshop. Then a small stand with a coffee window. And finally, her first full bakery in downtown Portland. Natasha did everything herself: recipes, supplies, the logo, supplier contracts, branded packaging. She drove all over town delivering boxes in her old car. Orders came through social media at first, then through her website. Within 2 years, her goods were on the shelves at Whole Foods. By year 3, she won a regional grant, and her monthly revenue was nearing $300,000. She remembered the way Michael, back when he was just her boyfriend, leaned in the doorway of her kitchen, laughing. Looks like you're gonna be the next cupcake queen. He helped out back then, carried boxes, negotiated rent when she lost her voice from overwork. She was in love. She truly believed she'd found not just a partner, but an equal. They got married a year after opening her first storefront. But over time, things started to change. When Natasha received her first award as Regional Entrepreneur of the Year, Michael didn't even show up to the ceremony. Claimed he had a meeting. No hug, no congratulations, just a flat, "Yeah, cool, I guess." Later, with friends, he'd say, "Natasha runs the business. I help her with the numbers," even though he hadn't touched the books in over a year. As money and recognition entered the picture, things at home soured. Michael got irritated when strangers recognized Natasha in public. He started making jabs. "So now you think you're the smart one? You wouldn't even have bought flour if it weren't for me. No one forced you to hustle like this. You chose it." And like clockwork, Patricia would appear, always with more judgment. She'd show up unannounced, inspect the displays, scold the staff. "You're holding that rag wrong. This counter looks like a cafeteria." She'd toss out lines like, "You're not on your own anymore. A business should be a family business, right?" At first, Natasha chalked it up to generational differences. Maybe some jealousy. But the bigger Crumb and Whimsy grew, the colder the stares got, the sharper the remarks. Michael's tone shifted too. "You don't think you're gonna carry all this on your own forever, right?" He started bringing her printed articles: why you should put your business in your husband's name, how to protect your family if your wife gets sick. He'd sit there, arms crossed. "What if something happens to you? What if a car hits you tomorrow? What, are you planning to push me in front of one?" Natasha would joke, but he never laughed. Then one day, Patricia marched straight into the bakery while Natasha was in the back. Her shift manager later told her she stood in the middle of the shop and announced, "Michael's going to take over soon. Natasha needs a break. A woman shouldn't carry the whole load." That night, Natasha couldn't sleep for 3 hours. Her heart pounded in her temples. It felt like her cozy little dream, her baby, her life's work. Someone was slowly, deliberately, and politely trying to take it away. All under the mask of concern. Still, Crumb and Whimsy kept growing. A new location in Beaverton. Interest from Trader Joe's. Investor meetings. But at home, everything was falling apart. Michael barely spoke to her, disappeared for days, slept on the couch, came home smelling like alcohol. And when he did speak, it was always resentment. All you care about is your damn money. I'm embarrassed to tell the guys my wife's the boss. The final straw came when he calmly, as if asking about the weather, placed a stack of documents on the kitchen table. It's all ready. Just need your signature. I'm not asking for the whole thing, just a share. We're family, right? Natasha was standing at the counter, slicing lemons for a lemon sponge cake. The knife paused midair. No, she said quietly. Just one word. But she could already feel the storm brewing in the house. She had decided long before, on their anniversary, she wouldn't think about fights, papers, or Patricia. 6 years together, that was still a part of her life. She wanted one evening without tension. Maybe something could still be saved? Then, out of the blue, Michael invited her to dinner. Not takeout. Not sushi from a plastic box on the kitchen counter, but an actual table at a nice restaurant with a view of the city. It felt unexpected. Natasha took it as a sign of hope. She pulled out her favorite dress, the one Michael once said made her look like a queen. Did her makeup. Tied her hair up. Slipped a thin white envelope into her purse, not a gift, but news. Crumb and Whimsy had just signed a deal with Whole Foods for 5 new regions. Natasha was thrilled. She wanted to share that moment. Wanted him to see her not as a rival, but the woman he once loved. As the cab pulled up to the restaurant, her heart raced. But the moment she walked in, something felt off. The host, recognizing her name, led her to the table, and Natasha froze. Patricia was already there. Wearing a pearl blouse, sipping wine, acting like she owned the place. Hi, Natasha, she said sweetly. I hope you don't mind. I told Michael that moments like these should be shared with family. Of course, Natasha replied through clenched teeth, rage bubbling just beneath the surface. Michael didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Just sat down and opened the menu. Natasha took her seat across from them, forcing a smile for the waiter. Her hands were trembling. The entire mood had vanished. Dinner dragged on awkwardly. Patricia went on about how hard it was to find good help these days, how her friend couldn't hire a decent housekeeper, how women had forgotten how to be wives. Natasha stayed silent. Michael nodded, drank wine, said nothing. When the main course arrived, Natasha carefully pulled the envelope from her purse and laid it on the table. I wanted to share some good news, she said. We signed a major contract. Crumb and Whimsy is expanding to 5 new regions. It's our biggest deal yet. Her voice was steady, but laced with hope. She longed to hear something, a well done, a I'm proud of you, a congratulations. Anything human. Silence. Patricia put her fork down and looked Natasha straight in the eyes. And you're still running the business all by yourself? You don't trust your husband enough to involve him in something that affects the whole family? Natasha turned to Michael. He was silent, staring into his plate. Then he looked up, and those weren't the eyes of a husband anymore. Maybe you're just scared I'll take something you think you built all on your own, he said coldly. Even though I was there when you didn't even have a decent mixing bowl. Natasha exhaled slowly. Her heart dropped, like someone had shoved ice under her ribs. Michael, please. Enough. We're in a restaurant. No, not enough, he snapped. Stop pretending you're something special. You just bake bread, don't forget that. You're not better than anyone else. People started turning their heads. Someone stopped chewing. Natasha felt her cheeks burn, her temples throb. She whispered, Not here. Michael shoved his chair back, scraping the floor. He stood. And the next moment, he slapped her. Her cheek lit up with pain, her head snapped to the side. Silence fell across the room. Then, gasps of shock. Natasha didn't even have time to scream before he grabbed her by the hair and yanked her away from the table. "What are you doing?" she cried out, but her voice was drowned in the growing noise around them. Her knees scraped the marble floor. Everything blurred, dreamlike, slow. Waiters rushed over. One of the diners yelled, "Call the police!" Someone was filming. People stood up, backed away, some already dialing 911. And the entire time, Patricia stood off to the side. Not a word. Not a move. Watching like it was all going according to plan. One of the restaurant staff, a tall man in a white shirt, ran up to Michael and barked, "Let her go. The police are on their way." Michael froze. His grip loosened. Natasha dropped to the floor, shaking all over, breathing shallow, like she'd just run a marathon. Her face was on fire. Her ears rang. She felt a thin drop of blood roll down her chin. Michael stood over her, panting. There was no regret in his eyes. Only rage. And fear. He knew he'd gone too far. Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. 2 officers and a pair of paramedics entered. The restaurant manager met them at the door and pointed toward Natasha and Michael. One officer approached Michael with purpose. "Sir, hands behind your back. You're under arrest for assault and battery in a public place. We have witnesses and video evidence." Michael muttered something but didn't resist. They cuffed him. He shot Natasha a look, dark, heavy as midnight. Once, that look would have made her tremble. But now? Now there was no fear. Just clarity. This was the end. Patricia finally spoke. "This is all just a misunderstanding. A family argument. Don't blow it out of proportion." "Tell that to the investigator," the second officer replied calmly. A paramedic knelt beside Natasha. "You're safe now. Let me check you out. You don't need a hospital tonight, but you should see a doctor soon." The restaurant was nearly empty. Water slicked the floor, wine glasses lay shattered under tables. One of the waiters reached out and helped her up. Natasha was still holding the white envelope, the contract. No one had even looked at it. That night, the apartment felt foreign. Like she had stepped into someone else's home. A place where a woman named Natasha used to live. But that woman felt far away. She never took off the dress. She sat on the couch, still clutching that same envelope. Her cheek throbbed so badly it made her eyes water, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the silence. Her phone kept lighting up, missed calls, messages from her team, anxious voice notes from Olivia, the bakery manager. "Natasha, we saw the video. It's already online. We're with you. Tell us what to do." But Natasha didn't want to talk to anyone. Not explain. Not defend herself. She just picked up her phone and tapped a name she hadn't touched in years. David. An old classmate. A lawyer now. They went to college together, then life took them in different directions, she into business, he into law. They didn't talk often, but he always answered. Always steady. Always dependable. That's what she needed right now, not pity, just a rock. "Hello?" His voice was sleepy but alert. "David," her voice trembled, "he hit me. Right in the restaurant. In front of everyone. Dragged me by my hair. The cops came. They took him." Silence on the other end. Then. "Where are you?" "At home." "Don't go anywhere." "I'm coming." 20 minutes later, he was at her door. No questions, no hesitation. Just a jacket, a folder under his arm, and that look, the kind that makes you want to cry, not out of pain, but out of the overwhelming feeling that you're not alone. He gently examined her face, touched under her eye. "We need to get the injuries documented. First thing in the morning, urgent care. Then a doctor's report. Then a statement. But we'll start with a lawyer. I don't want just a divorce, Natasha said, her voice now steady. I want him to face real consequences. Him and his mother. I want this to end. David nodded. Then tomorrow we go see Sophia Anderson. She specializes in domestic abuse. She's sharp. She'll know what to do. Sophia Anderson was exactly the kind of woman you'd want on your side. Impeccably dressed, calm, focused, and fiercely empathetic. Natasha, you made the right decision, she said after listening to everything. What happened to you is a criminal offense. But we won't stop there. We'll prove this wasn't an isolated incident, it was sustained psychological and physical abuse. We'll file for divorce, press charges, and we'll also make sure your mother-in-law is held accountable for her role. Is that even possible? Natasha whispered. Not just possible. Necessary. She was complicit. You don't have to accept this just because it's family. You don't have to stay silent to keep things tidy. This is your life. And we're going to protect it. They got to work. David gathered video footage from the restaurant's security cameras. The manager handed over official recordings. Dozens of witnesses left their contact info and confirmed they'd testify. One of the waiters, a guy in his 20s, filed a police report himself. Natasha went in for a medical exam. Bruised cheek. Scratches on her scalp. Mild concussion. All documented. Doctor's notes completed. Sophia filed a report with the DA's office. David printed out a voicemail from Patricia, the one she left the night before the anniversary. Her voice calm, calculated. Natasha, stop being difficult. You're tearing this family apart over pastries. Sign the papers and move on. Is your business really more important than your marriage? Sophia listened, lips pressed into a firm line. This is emotional abuse. Manipulation. Coercion. Control through threats of isolation. We'll document everything. And we're not just filing for divorce, we're pursuing charges for coercion to transfer property and complicity in abuse and psychological violence. You really think we'll win? Sophia looked her straight in the eyes. I think we'll come out on top. Natasha left the office with a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. It wasn't relief, not quite. But it was the beginning of something deeper, the return of control. The return of herself. You're incredibly brave, David said as they rode in the taxi. Even if you don't feel it yet. Have you always been this calm? She asked. No, he smiled. I've just seen too many times what silence does to people. So when someone chooses to speak, I stay with them. All the way. That night, he stayed over. On a folding chair, wrapped in a blanket, laptop on his knees. He took notes, called the police station, double-checked the report. Natasha lay on the couch, and for the first time in ages, she fell asleep without fear. And when she woke up, there was no panic. Only clarity. Today, the Real fight begins. The courthouse looked like it could swallow her whole, massive, gray, dull windows. Natasha stood at the entrance, gripping a folder of documents. She wasn't alone. David was by her side. Sophia Anderson stood just behind, with her assistant. The support wasn't loud, it was in the silence, and the steady way they moved forward. Inside, reporters were already waiting. A local news station had requested access to cover the trial, too public, too violent, too visible to sweep under the rug. Michael's lawyer petitioned for a closed hearing, but the judge denied it. The assault happened in public, in front of dozens of witnesses. There would be no hiding. Michael entered the courtroom with a young lawyer in an expensive suit. His face was tense but smug. He didn't look at Natasha. Patricia sat beside him in a gray pantsuit, lips pursed, eyes icy. The judge began the proceedings. The first piece of evidence, video footage from the restaurant. The screen lit up with raw violence, a slap, hair yanked, screams, chaos. The sound was muted, but even without it, the room recoiled. This is an emotion. It's not a sudden outburst, Sophia told the court. This is domination. A performance of control and humiliation. Then came the witnesses. A young waitress, voice trembling. I've never seen a man treat a woman like that. She didn't even scream. She just looked at him like she couldn't believe it was happening. The restaurant manager. He knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't someone losing it. This was punishment. The paramedic. Natasha had bruises, swelling, abrasions on her scalp, symptoms of trauma and panic. The arresting officer. The defendant didn't deny the assault. We had video, 10 witnesses. His reaction was aggression, an attempt to diminish the victim. Natasha sat quietly, fists clenched. Every word pulled her through the pain again, but this time, it didn't break her. It built her back. Then the audio played, Patricia's voice. Natasha, don't be ridiculous. Sign the papers and stop ruining my son's life. Family matters more than your cupcakes. Do you really think you'd have anything without Michael? The judge raised her eyebrows and looked at Patricia, who turned away. Michael's legal team scrambled, nervous breakdown, temporary loss of control, not a crime. Patricia's lawyer claimed she was just concerned, not manipulative. That Natasha was overly emotional and impulsive. But their arguments hit a wall of proof. Then it was Natasha's turn. She stood and walked to the stand. Her fingers trembled. Her voice didn't. People call me strong, successful, independent. But you know what's truly terrifying? Realizing the person you share your bed with doesn't dream of your success, they dream of taking it, owning it, breaking it. My business isn't just bread and cupcakes. It's my life. I baked through the night while he slept. I drove deliveries in a broken-down car while he watched football with friends. And now they say it's not mine? That I should share it? For what? The humiliation? The violence? No. I don't owe anyone anything. She paused. The courtroom was silent. I'm not afraid anymore. And I'm not handing over my life to the people who tried to destroy it. The verdict was read beneath the dim lights of the courtroom. Michael Johnson, you are found guilty of assault, public endangerment, and domestic abuse. You are sentenced to 4 years in a state correctional facility. Patricia Johnson, you are found guilty of psychological coercion, attempted property manipulation, and complicity in sustained emotional abuse. You are sentenced to 2 years probation, a mandatory psychological intervention program, and a restraining order prohibiting contact with the victim. Natasha exhaled. Michael sat pale and speechless. His lawyer was still talking, but she wasn't listening. Patricia was frozen, expressionless. Sophia Anderson gave a faint, proud smile. David leaned toward her. You really did it. When it was over and they stepped outside, the sun hit their faces, warm and steady, nothing like the day of the attack. Natasha paused on the courthouse steps and finally took a deep breath. A few days later, Natasha walked into Crumb and Whimsy not as a stressed-out manager, but as a woman who had won. The girls behind the counter, Emma, Sarah, Lisa, greeted her with applause. Someone brought flowers. Someone just hugged her tight, no words needed. The shelves were filled with fresh pies, crusty bread, bright muffins. Life went on. The bakery had stood while she fought. Natasha cried right there in the middle of the shop, surrounded by the scent of vanilla and warmth. Not from weakness, but from gratitude. The Whole Foods contract had gone through. Sales were booming. People messaged her directly. Natasha, you're an inspiration. I bought your bread because you stood up for yourself. Local media picked up her story. Then came a full segment on the state's biggest news channel. No last names. Just her voice. One night, sitting at the same kitchen table where Michael once laid down those papers, Natasha and David were planning the next step. He opened his laptop. We need to set up a foundation. Not just charity, a real program. Jobs, housing, training. You name it. Natasha looked up at the Crumb and Whimsy logo above the door. Let's call it the Living Project. Because this isn't about paperwork. It's about choosing life. And so, a new program was born, Support for Women Surviving Domestic Violence. Natasha cleared part of the bakery's production space for a training area. Donated old equipment. Bought new uniforms for interns. David brought in lawyers to offer free legal help. The first woman signed up. Then another. Within a month, there were 10. 2 months later, 23. They came afraid, broken. Some with kids. Some without documents. Some with scars deeper than anyone could see. And they left with certificates, experience, and hope. That spring, Natasha and David got married. No fanfare, no glossy magazine feature. Just close friends, co-workers, the bakery girls, the ones who stood by her through fire. Her dress was sky blue, not white. Because this wasn't a new beginning. It was a continuation. Her first wedding was about a promise. This one was about truth. On her wedding day, Natasha stood at the mic and said, "I survived." But that's not the point. The point is, I'm not silent anymore. And I'm standing up for others. The whole room rose to their feet. Even the chef came out from the kitchen and applauded. 6 months later, Crumb and Whimsy opened a new branch in Seattle. Then Denver. Then Chicago. Natasha's name came to stand for more than baked goods. It stood for strength, for female independence. Graduates of the Living Project became managers, pastry chefs, opened their own bakeries. Natasha mentored them, connected them with networks, and sometimes just believed in them when no one else would. One night, one of them, Carol, whispered as she held her first paycheck, "You gave me back my name. I feel like me again." Natasha and David often sat on the bakery's rooftop at night, sipping tea, eating leftover pie, watching the city lights. He always said, "This is your work. I'm just lucky to be here." And she knew, beside a man like him, she was never afraid. He didn't try to save her. He didn't expect thanks. He just stayed. And never once did he doubt her.